Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about ancient Indian empires today, kind of picking up where we left off when we talked about Mohenjo-Daro, and we'll talk a little bit about what happened after those civilizations were created. You can see we have a couple I-Can statements today looking at Indian culture and life, at least what was brought in by a specific group here, and then we'll start to get into some of the ideas of Hinduism and Buddhism, and we'll talk more about those in the next couple days here. So there are Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Those are the two cities that we just kind of talked about, or we saw a little video clip about. And you can see that's the Indus River right there. So we'll talk a little bit about the Indus River Valley, and then we'll move over and talk about the Ganges River Valley as well. Okay. So starting off with the first group, these people were actually nomadic invaders to India. You can see here's Mohenjo-Daro on the map right there. And these people came from the Caucasus region here between the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. They're called the nomadic Indo-Aryans. So tribes of Indo-Europeans crossed over the Hindu Kush Mountains, which are the mountains in the northwestern portion of India or Pakistan. And that's where they crossed over kind of into that Mohenjo-Daro region right around the time of 1750 BCE. And so those people came in and kind of invaded that territory around Mohenjo-Daro. They were drawn there because of the northern pasture land that is there in kind of northern India. They were there to farm, is what essentially they decided to start doing after they planted down their seeds here from being nomadic. Finally, we look at this period that in time here in India is called the Vedic Age, and that's because the religious scriptures that the nomadic Indo-Aryans bring with them are called the Vedas. And so the Vedic Age starts around 1500 BC and lasts to about 1000 BC, so about a 500-year range there. All right, let's take a closer look at the nomadic Indo-Aryans here. Their religion that we're looking at, it's actually Hinduism, and we'll talk more about Hinduism shortly here in the next day or so. But they believe in one supreme God that exists over other gods. And that one supreme God is called Brahma, and we'll get more into that later on. The gods, a lot of their gods come from nature or spiritual ideas, and so we look at, they had a sky god who they believed was the father, they have an earth goddess who they believed was the mother. Brahmins are the name that they give special priests, and those special priests are the ones that kind of continued on that religion for the Indo-Aryans, that Hindu belief. And finally, we look at the Brahmins use the Sanskrit writing system, which is still a writing system that is used predominantly throughout India today. So what kind of society did they bring with them? They actually brought a lot of cultural ideas in society and imprinted it on the people of India, the natives who were already living in the Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa area. And so if we look at some of the differences between the people who already lived in Mohenjo-Daro, the Indus River Valley, and the Indo-Aryans who came in, the people who came in, the Indo-Aryans, tended to be more light-skinned. The people who already lived there tended to be more dark-skinned. The people who came in, the Indo-Aryans, they were nomadic, whereas the Harappans were farmers. They were settled. They lived in civilized areas as well. And then the social structure. The Indo-Aryans bring their social structure with them, which was priests and warriors kind of at the top of this social hierarchy, and underneath that you have merchants, traders, farmers, and servants. And when they came in, they kind of imprinted that idea onto the Harappan people, the Mohenjo-Daro and Harappan people who already lived there, putting themselves at the top of that social structure, and the Indus River Valley people of Mohenjo-Daro at the bottom of that social structure. Vedic laws is something, just like we said, the religious scriptures are the Vedas. They believed in three kind of major ideas when we look at their Vedic laws. Number one, the importance of marriage. Marriage was extremely important to the Indo-Aryans. So important, in fact, that a lot of times marriages were arranged. They weren't just because of love, but they tended to be based on uniting families or tribal groups together, or for wealth or whatever it may be. They also looked at limited social orders, meaning this, what we call the caste system. We learned a little bit about last year, but the caste system is in place. You don't really speak to or communicate with people outside of your caste, your social order. And that's where we get back to that social structure we see with the warriors and the priests and then the other groups below them. We look at the economy and their trading systems and farming. So they were a farming economy. When they got to India, they started to farm. That's why they kind of put down roots there and they stayed there. They settled in that region because it was good farmland. So wheat, barley, rice, sugarcane, all kinds of different things were being farmed in that region. Trade was actually fairly difficult, though, because you have the Hindu Kush Mountains in the northwest. You've got the Himalayas in the northeast, so it made it very difficult to trade with other groups. Finally, we look at the new society that was created. The Indo-Aryans moved into the Indus River Valley. They changed the society there. The Harappans, the Mohenjo-Daran people that lived there already, they imprinted their culture onto those people. And so they brought their religious values, and we see Hinduism start to take over in that region, even for the native people from there. And then the social classes and the caste system start to take over for those people that had already lived there. They brought all that with them, the Indo-Aryans. We're also going to take a look at two specific empires that existed. This is afterwards. Now we're kind of sliding over into the Ganges River Valley. And so after Mohenjo-Daro, after the Indo-Aryans arrive, we see the development of the Mauryan Empire and then later the Gupta Empire along the Ganges River in central or north central India. And so when we look at the Mauryan Empire, they began right around the years 320 BCE and existed about up to 185 BCE. And we look at the very first emperor of their empire was Chandragupta Maurya. He's the one that created it. He's the one that built the empire itself. Now, when he started out, he built this large palace on the Ganges River. We can see a picture of it a little later. So he established his capital and his empire right on the river right there. While he was in power, he raised a very large army for this time in history, a 600,000 soldier army. They were equipped with thousands of different chariots, and they actually had elephants that were used in battle as well. And through warfare, he united most of northern India. All right, so through bloodshed and warfare, he basically took over different tribes, different groups, and consolidated power in the north portion of India. He accomplished a lot, but because of the bloodshed, because of the war, he made a lot of enemies. And so that leads to his grandson. When his grandson eventually takes over the throne, his name is Asoka. Asoka becomes maybe the greatest ruler of the Mauryan Empire, much greater even than his grandfather who started the empire. And they fought, while he was in power, he fought bloody wars. He united basically all of what we think of as India, the Indian subcontinent. He united all of it under his empire and under his rule. And he fought a lot of these bloody battles to do so. One day he finally realized that his entire life has been killing and bloodshed, and that isn't the best life. And so he decided to convert to Buddhism. Now, we'll learn more about Buddhism later on, but basically, if you know anything about Buddhism, they are anti-violence, non-violent religion. And so they believe in not being violent whatsoever to any living organism, any living creature. And so Asoka stops the killing, and many of the people in the Mauryan Empire follow him and also convert to Buddhism as well. Because of that, to bring his policies of the empire more under his ideas and the Buddhist understanding here, he reverses a lot of his father's and grandfather's laws and policies, and really greatly shapes India into a Buddhist society. Now, Asoka eventually dies, and when he does so, his sons end up battling each other for control of the empire. And what happens after that is the empire basically collapses. And so we do see the end of the Mauryan Empire. All right, but this is considered to be the first empire of India. If we take a look, here is the palace that was built along the Ganges way back when Asoka's grandfather, Chandragupta Maurya, built the first capital city. There it is right there, right along the Ganges. Now, a couple hundred years go by here, and finally a family rises up to power, and they have the ability to kind of take over and reunify these tribes and groups in India, and that family is the Gupta Empire, the Gupta family. And so we're looking at about the years 320. It says AD. We also say CE. Well, 320 CE. So we've gone through BCE. We've reached 0. We've continued on to 320 now in AD or CE. And so that's when the Gupta Empire is established. And the first emperor takes the name Chandragupta. All right, so a little bit different than Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta I is the emperor's name of the Gupta Empire. And he establishes his new empire at the same capital city, same capital spot that the Mauryan Empire had existed. So a little bit of a historical homage to the empire that came before the Gupta Empire. While he was in power, Chandragupta I shifted from Buddhism back to Hinduism. So we see a shift back to the Hindu religion here from Buddhism. He also conquered northern India, a lot of it through warfare, but he also developed a new method of conquering territory, and that is through intermarriage. Rather than fighting bloody wars and conquering people, he decided that it would be better to take a wife from that different tribe or different group and unite the two groups peacefully rather than fight with everybody. So that is another method that he used during that time. Everything that happens during this Gupta Empire is considered to be the golden age of India. Lots of great achievements and advancements in cultural areas. We look at art and architecture, mathematics, science, medicine, and we will go more in depth on those a little later. All right, but a lot of great achievements are happening during that time, during the Gupta Empire, the golden age here. Finally, we see that the political system is weakened in the Gupta Empire, and just like all empires, we eventually see that the Gupta Empire also collapses over time. So, ladies and gentlemen, we just have a quick little summary that we want you to write up here. It says, how can we best describe the history of India? Was it one of unification, or was it struggles to become unified? So we just want you to write a short paragraph that kind of answers that question, use some evidence from what we just talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good one. We'll see you again soon.